There's been a need throughout our cultural history to have great mythical icons of female evil. Elizabeth Bathory, in due course, was taken up to represent this figure. The bloodiness of her myth and the bloodiness of the events ascribed to her are typical of medieval and post-medieval European imagination.
In 1611, in an isolated castle high up in the mountains of what is now modern Slovakia, a woman was about to begin a death sentence, condemned to spend the rest of her life walled up in a single room. At her trial, Countess Elizabeth Bathory, one of the most powerful aristocrats of her day, was accused and convicted of murdering over 600 young girls.
She had absolute power.
According to the evidence given at her trial, a picture emerged of a woman who not only had a need to inflict pain and commit murder, but apparently developed an obsession with her victim's blood. Elizabeth Bathory's taste for this blood would eventually give her the title by which she's still known today, Countess Dracula. Elizabeth didn't confine her particular brand of domestic discipline to Hungary. On several occasions during her life, she was in Vienna to visit the court of the Austrian king, Matthias. Despite protests, she tortured servant girls here at her house in Augustinerstrasse.
And we have the accounts of the monks from the Augustiner monastery across the street. They heard the noises of these girls, the torture sounds. So they threw their pots against the windows. But there was nothing they could do about it, because she was a powerful woman.
These scenarios were repeated at several of her castles, including this one at Lockenhaus on the Austrian border. At Čachtice, one of her few remaining castles, that abuse would escalate to the point where Elizabeth Bathory would become a mass murderer. According to the documents from her trial in 1611, it was estimated that she killed almost 650 young girls.
There are two reasons for what she did. One of them has to do with her own mindset. She thought she was just disciplining her servants. But the other has to do with just getting old and jealousy about the beauty of these girls. She's in her 40s and she was fading. Elizabeth Bathory was very obsessed with her own looks. She used to have a mirror, and she would spend hours looking at herself in that mirror. She had that narcissistic fascination with herself and her fading beauty.
She may have eaten young women's flesh in an attempt to incorporate their youth within her.
Somehow in her mind, apparently, she thought if she ingested parts of these girls, maybe she could acquire some of their youthful beauty. So technically speaking, what we're dealing with here is you are what you eat.
Cannibalized, sexually assaulted, tortured, and beaten to death, the bodies began to pile up at Čachtice.
And after a while, when they were running up into the hundreds, she was running out of space. She kept some of the bodies of these girls under her bed, and the place really started to stink. What she would do is she'd have these girls up in cages, and then she had a long lance, and she would pierce them, and the blood would come down and flow on her, and then she would shout obscenities, apparently.
Elizabeth Bathory might have gone on killing with impunity forever, but the year 1610 marked the beginning of her end.
she made a big mistake. As long as she dealt with Slovak peasants, nobody cared. That's a fact. She could have gotten away with it. She went after the daughter of a local Protestant minister. Big mistake. Because this girl escaped and told the story about what was going on up there in the castle. When news came to the Hungarian nobles, well, they couldn't tolerate that. One of their own, you know? That was her critical error.
By the order of Count Thurzo, Elizabeth Bathory was still under arrest at her castle at Chechtice.
Well, I think he was still deciding whether he could get away with trying her or not. And in the end, perhaps he decided it was better just to let her rot, which is what happened.
Elizabeth's sentence was publicly announced by Thurzo. Lifelong imprisonment in one room at her castle in Chechtice. In late August 1614, the bloody countess was found lying face down on the floor of this same room, dead at 54.